Hey, HTDA, and today we're playing some more Mindustry. Last time around you saw me building this entire base, twice, because the first time around it got overrun. But yeah, we have the sector under control now, and I'm now making pretty decent amount of thorium. I am making face fabric, and I am also making somewhere over here in the glorious gluttony that is my base over here, I am making some surge alloy, which allowed me to actually clear out like 20 new technologies or something like that. It is the titanium thing all over again. We have so much new stuff to work with. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's a couple of highlights that I do want to mention before we dive into the next level. Probably the most important item that I unlocked, well, maybe not the most important, but at least the one that I'm looking forward to using the most, let's put it like that, is the mass driver. And I've been running a little bit of a test over here. As you can see, I have 3 full belts of sand coming in both of these things, and it looks like it's pretty much able to handle all of that. It is having a throughput of over 30 items per second. It's not consistent entirely, but it's close enough for 3 full belts. And it also seems that a single mass driver can easily receive that many items. As you can see, it's processing 60 items per second, and I actually think it can probably handle a little bit more than that. But that means I can combine up to 6 different belts into this single thing and actually output all of that. And that's the most important thing, because that basically means if I combine these at my central storage over here, I can double the amount of throughput that comes in, and I don't have to do all of this cluster effing with my belts anymore. I could actually completely clean this up, because you can see I have my main bottlenecks in this particular region are the actual incoming belts, because they need to fit through here. But thanks to these mass drivers, I can just shoot all of that over and not have to deal with any of that. Now, should I rearrange this? Maybe. I'm actually not entirely sure. There doesn't seem to be a huge need for that at the moment, but I will be doing that at some point if I have to. Now, it's also worth noting that even though I am producing all the different units now, and I did upgrade my base considerably, I'm not producing a large amount of alloy and face fabric. The thorium is okay, but especially the face fabric, because it actually costs thorium, is very slow to produce. I have 2 of these face weavers active at the moment, and they are producing a total of 1 per second. Yes, just 1 per second. So I'm not gonna be at 12k or 21k for that matter anytime soon just from this single base. I could produce a little bit more if I also use the second belt, but I actually need the thorium more than I need the face fabric for now. At least that is what I believe. I also unlocked a bunch of other stuff, like a new type of pump, I have a new type of repair turret, I have a couple of new turrets in general that I think we'll get into later on, but I really am interested in the RTG generator. This is another way to produce power. It's not actually that much power, but this thing just functions on either thorium or face fabric. And from the consumption rates you can see that I think it's about 100 face fabric will last me 7 hours, if I did that math correctly. Just 100 face fabric without any production. And if I can just have a single face weaver making face fabric, I can fuel over, I believe it's 1,000 of these things. So yeah, this is one way of producing a lot of power. Now, this building itself is really expensive, so that is something to keep in mind. But we can also just fuel it on thorium, and again, that's not quite an insane rate as it is with the face fabric, but it's a pretty cheap way of getting power, although not necessarily space efficient. If you compare it to the previous version that we've been using, where is it? I think it's the one over here. This is really cheap to make as well, and it's producing 3 times as much power as a single one of the RTG generators, but it's a nice option to have, so I'm really looking forward to kind of just testing that out and see if that's going to be interesting. Now, last but not least, I'm not going to go through everything, but this is worth noting. I unlocked the building that makes the tier 3 units, as well as all the actual tier 3 units. With the exception, apparently, of this unit over here, which is one of the naval units that we have to play another level for. But other than that, we have a lot of new units to play around with, and these things are actually pretty cheap. This building itself is super expensive, as you can see, but actually producing these units is not expensive at all. You just need some silicon, titanium, metal glass, and all of that is pretty easy to come by in general. So, yeah, looking forward to having some real firepower in my units. Now, I could actually already unlock tier 4 units as well, but as you can see, I need a massive amount of face fabric for that, and I didn't feel like waiting around for another few hours because I did just idle around to unlock all of that technology that I just showed you. I'm just gonna go and play and hope that I don't need to jump straight from tier 2 to tier 4 units within a single level. I don't think that's intended, most likely. I think that covers everything for now. Yeah, we have new belts, but I think I covered it last time around. If there's anything else we missed, I think that will come up as we play. Alright, with all of that housekeeping out of the way, I am going to be playing on eradication difficulty still because I do like the challenge, even though I have been complaining a little bit about some bugs. But I've been told that it might be either related to the fact that I keep walling off my base completely, so if leaving a gap is going to solve that problem, that's very simple to do, or that it might be related to the RTS attack AI. I'll leave this on for the moment, but it's worth noting that if you have any issues with unit behavior, then one of those two things might solve the problem for you. For now, I am just going to leave a gap in my base and see if that makes a difference. I still don't really have any idea where to go next, considering how many levels we have available, but I think the Facility 32M, as well as this one over here, the Nuclear Production Complex, are the two that we've had available for the longest time. So those are the two I'm going to focus on next. With the new base unlocked, I made myself a new little design over here with an increased sized base, with some larger storage units as well, and with some power integrated. These are the RTG generators, and I'm still going to make tier 1 and tier 2 flying units because that helps me mine and make stuff very efficiently. I can max out, and I can actually bring a ridiculous amount of stuff with me now. Yeah, wow, this is a lot of stuff. And you can see I'm actually bringing face fabric, plastinium, surge alloy, etc. with me now as well. So yeah, this is going to allow me to build a pretty big base from the get-go. And I mean, either that and or units, I suppose. But for now, let's see if this is working like intended. So let's pause. Yep, you can see I instantly started building flares. Yeah, that is exactly not what I wanted to build. I want to build monos. There we go. Let's see if we can fix that. Yep, there we go. And let's pause the game. Let's see. The nice thing about these RGG generators included in this build like that, it just means I'm instantly going to start building those monos. And why is this not powered? That's really weird. That should have power, no problem. There we go. Yeah, not sure why that's not linked from the get-go. Anyway, my point is, I should be starting to build my flying units straight away, and that just helps speed up everything else. Now, what kind of wasteland is this that we found ourselves in now? We are going to be attacked from the other side of the map. Okay, that is very clear. Everything is going to come from over here, which means that we kind of have like two routes down. Now, that means that, let's see how far those spawning zones reach out. Pretty far down, actually. So there's no way we can build anything up here, so then we might as well just build our defensive line over here, so we have one large bottleneck where we can capture everything at the same time. That does not leave us with a massive amount of space to build, although it's a pretty decent amount. There's just a lot of like there's not a lot of open wider zones. That's what I was trying to get at. We have a lot of these walls that we cannot remove, which is honestly a little bit annoying, but we can probably work with that. There's some stuff in here, blast mix, so I guess we're going to be unlocking that in this particular level. Let me check out the research. Did we actually already unlock anything else? No, I was expecting blast compound to show up, but we might need to complete the level first in order to do that. We do have a lot of resources around. We have slag, we have copper, titanium, lead. Do we have thorium? Nope. Like I said, this is a level that we've had unlocked for quite a while. So I guess this is supposed to be one of the pre-thorium levels, which is funny considering I just brought 6,500 with me. But yeah, I think that should mean this is going to be pretty straightforward. Alright, first things first, I need some additional power, and I've been alternating a little bit what I actually start out with to get my power started, which is honestly a good thing because it means that there's not a clear winner in between these, although I have a feeling that these generators, these RTG generators, might quickly become exactly that. But anyway, someone pointed out in the comments that I've been using the electric pumps a lot while that was not strictly necessary, and honestly, you're right. So I might as well just use the basic ones if I don't want to be lazy, because that's the main reason I was actually using the other ones. But it will definitely save me a little bit of power by doing so. So there you go. This should make sure we have 4 of these steam generators each pumping out over 300 power. So we are now sitting on a nice and gentle 1.1 surplus. That means that next on the list is some pyrite production, because that is going to fuel all my turrets. And that means we need some coal, we need some more coal, which is actually under here, we need some lead, and we need some sand, and all of that is nicely available right next to the front line. And with the pyrite in production and a little bit of a container to make sure we can stockpile it, we can start working on our front line. Now honestly, I'm just going to focus on getting a couple of lancers up and running, because that's probably enough to take on the first wave or so. But yeah, just making sure that we have a little bit of air defense, for example, is probably not a bad idea either. And all we need to do that is have a couple of these swarmers up and running as well. And then the ripples are just a bonus. And as you can see, we have over a minute to spare, so the first wave should not be a problem. They rarely are, but still, the first deadline is always a crucial one. It is worth noting that I intentionally am leaving a gap in my defenses now, even though it's not a massive gap, just to make sure that the enemy can get through, because again, I do not want any bugs, although in the levels with the waves I really haven't had those to begin with anyway, but you know, can't hurt to make sure the enemy is funneled through the middle, considering we don't have that many turrets over here compared to some of the previous levels, and we don't really have the space to build a lot more than these. Okie dokie, and as usual, just a couple of tier 1 or tier 2 units to start off with, and we're completely demolishing them, of course, with the defense that we have in place. Now, I did add in a couple more towers. I actually messed up the water supply over here, so that should now be... well, it's not fixed. I was about to say it should be fixed, but now it's fixed. There we go. So everything should be water boosted now. Let's double check. Yep, and that means we do have quite a bit of firepower. Now, I am leeching off a little bit of my pyrite production to have some differential generators up and running, because we needed the additional power. And honestly, that is probably all the turrets that I'm going to be building for the moment. With all of that done, I am going to double up on my pyrite production. Yes, these are new facilities compared to the ones I already have above, because I want some additional power production, and assuming I actually hook this up to water, that should work. There we go, and that means it's now time to start working on some of the basics. Which means we have a little bit of copper coming in, a little bit of lead coming in, titanium. I am using some of the coal up here to start making some graphite. There's a little bit of titanium as well over here, so I am getting all of that in. I am making some silicon from the coal over here and the pyrite that I was already producing in this secondary location. Adding in some sand, of course. And then what else? Oh, right, metaglass is what I'm producing over here. Now, I am watering all of this with 2 of my impulse pumps. And before you start shouting at me, yes, I know this is complete overkill in terms of the production of water, but I just wanted to play with my new pumps, so leave me alone. And I've reinforced my front line a little bit with a couple of cyclones and some more of these swarmers over here, just to make sure that no air units are going to get through. And I put a little bit of random towers in the gaps in between here as well. Probably fit in another one over here. There we go. Just because I can. Which begs the question, what am I going to do next? I could position some ground units in between here as well, so that could work. But as usual, I'm leaning towards using some of my flying units, and then specifically, I'm looking into building a couple of those, what are these called? Zeniths? Let's check these out. So these are tier 3 flying units, and let me check this time if I have the correct unit. Yeah, these should be shooting at both air and ground. They cost silicon, titanium, and metaglass to make, all of which I'm currently producing. And I built them from horizons. And horizons, by the way, do not shoot at air targets, despite what I might have been claiming in some of the previous episodes. Yeah, building these seems like a pretty good idea. Now, if we build these, what are we going to need? Not much, honestly. We just need silicon. We need silicon and graphite, or silicon and graphite, and then add in titanium and metal glass, and we have everything we need. Okay, so I guess this does the trick. This little triangle of, well, it's not really a triangle, but these 3 different production units. I still don't really like the fact that we need 3 things to make a single unit, or at least a tier 3 unit, but it is what it is. I do need to make sure I fix this over here, because this is not going to work for very long, considering these belts are polluting each other. So the thorium belts are going to come in handy for sure. Okay, so this is going to produce the tier 3 flying unit, the offensive one. Might as well add some more to this. Alright, we have a wave incoming. Let's see what these tier 3 units can do. So far, they're not doing anything. And that is probably because the enemy is not coming close enough. But it is good to have a couple of these pretty impressive ships, honestly, in reserve, just in case we need them. And while I'm at it, I figured, well, if I can make those tier 3 units work over here, why not just make some more tier 3 units? In this case, I am trying to build the tier 3 unit from the dagger upgraded to the mace, upgraded to a fortress, which is just going to attack ground units for this time around, but it has a massive range of almost 30, and it shoots AoE at ground targets. So I figured, well, it's a nice little backup for all my defense that I have on the ground. Anyway, it's basically a mobile turrets in a way that I can just climb up in the middle of my base. The main problem here, though, is that all of this costs a massive amount of silicon. As you can see, I'm pretty much out of that. I'm producing slightly more than I'm consuming, but honestly, it is pretty close. Okay, so this is a little bit more silicon production, and I figured why not make use of my mass driver. So I'm collecting a couple of the resources that I'm producing, the metal glass and silicon mostly, and I'm shooting those to this mass driver over here that is passing it on to this one that is connected to my nucleus. And you can see, as soon as this receives any of the resources, there you go, is a little whoop, and it's all in the main base. So it's actually a pretty efficient way to get things from A to B, and I don't have to bother with a lot of that spaghetti of belts. Although it does feel like I might be replacing some of the belt spaghetti with mass driver spaghetti, because I just figured, well, I'm a little low on titanium, so let's add in some of those as well. So I added in a secondary line of mass drivers that finally converges on the same one in the main base, so you can really funnel a lot of stuff into that one. But you do want to make sure that a lot of these supply lines, I think, have their own dedicated mass drivers, because these things do not fire very slow, so that's a limit to the throughput right there. Now actually I have one outgoing mass driver as well, one with pyrite, because the production has a bit of trouble keeping up with the quick succession of waves that you get on eradication. It wasn't a problem on lower difficulties, but in order to make sure everything actually has ammo, yeah, you need a fair amount of pyrite. So I'm actually using some of my surplus over here. Just a couple more waves to go, so we'll be fine. But having the mass driver, importing that, is going to go a very long way to making sure I don't run out of ammunition. Okay, so I have a fair amount of these tier 3 units, the flying ones, but also quite a few actually of the tier 2, or short tier 3 ground ones. You can see there are little bolts flying out into the enemy. And I think that is going to be more than enough to take on the last wave, because you can see from already at wave 24, actually that's the kind of the thing I like about eradication. It doesn't just force you to idle around and build stuff you probably don't need. Although, well, there's always a use for building that stuff, don't get me wrong. But yeah. Oh, by the way, I actually built a couple of cyclones over here as well, because there were a couple of air units sneaking through that were starting to bombard my base. Now, that wasn't really a problem, it's just a couple of tier 2 units, I believe, that could easily shoot down with all the aircrafts that I already had. But, you know, I just want to make sure that that doesn't happen again, and I don't accidentally lose the game as a result. Now, this is the last wave, if I'm not mistaken. There's no boss in there, apparently. And there you go. You can see my parallax units taking care of all those flying units. And was that it? Oh, we actually still have a couple of ground units left. And there we go. We have another sector captured. We have some new content unlocked. Not entirely sure what that content is, honestly. Is that just this thing? An extraction outpost? So this is just a new level that we can access, but I don't think we actually unlocked any new recipes or anything like that. However, in the meanwhile, I have been producing some more face fabric and surge alloy in the other base. So I'm slowly inching my way to getting a little bit more of that for my exponential reconstructor. Although this level wasn't that long, it wasn't that complicated. So yeah, we're going to have to move on to some more levels that get me some thorium so we can really up that production. That said, I do really like these tier 3 units. They feel like they have a lot more staying power, a lot more firepower, of course, as well. And even though I've just built a couple of them, I mean, these are just 19 units of those tier 3 units. Yeah, I think this is very promising for the next few levels. Either way, if you're still here, you're awesome. I do hope to catch you in the next one.